Hi, I'm Mhytra, and in the next few minutes I'm going to take you through my incredibly flawed game development journey so far. The year was 2008. It was the end of my third semester in Aveiro University. For one of our main classes, we were given a group assignment, making a flash game using ActionScript. After a botched attempt at an RTS-style game, we let our teachers know during Christmas break we were going to change our project. We got inspired by Cave Story, Contra, and our love for pixel art, and decided to make a side-scrolling platform shooter. My group did everything, and I do mean everything. Story, graphics, code, music, sound effects, you name it. In 1 month, Captain Mhytra was born. We started late December 2008, and we were done mid to late January 2009. As I recall it, out of all our group's projects, it was the one that was graded the highest. It was, compared to the other submissions that year, a finished product. There were 12 levels, branching storylines, increasingly hard and diverse enemies and levels, a progression system with power-ups, bosses, side quests, a fun main character, and a killer 8-bit original soundtrack. It was truly unlike everything that was presented that same semester, most of which were casual games with a single scenario and 3 difficulty levels. You can still play it today on Newgrounds, link in the description. Much love to these guys, by the way. But the love for video games had to wait. In 2010 I graduated and started working as a web developer. Then, a couple of years later, a coworker told me about Slender the 8 Pages and about how it was done in Unity, a free engine. That night, I got home and gave it a try. This was my first Unity build, made on the 11th of December 2012. Really simple. Go around the maze, shoot the mannequins, they blow up, win. This was simple enough to motivate me to acquire a Unity course. As a part of that course, I made another small game, but eventually, over the years, lost the build I made for that specific game. Later, in 2014, being really into sim racing and having recently raced with a group of friends on KIRO, a kart racing track in Portugal, I decided to take a dip in the R-Factor modding community. I made a virtual version of this very same racetrack, getting it to be one of the highest rated and most downloaded kart racing tracks for the R-Factor simulator. It is still to this day the 3rd highest rated kart track in the R-Factor modding community. A couple of months after I made this track, I was contacted by the owner of another kart racing track in Portugal. He invited me over, and I took the opportunity to bring along the friend that had taught me how to make mod tracks for R-Factor. We drove around the track for an hour, took hundreds of pictures, and were asked to make the virtual version of it. And so we did. I put my poor 3D modeling skills to use and partnered with my friend to make this track awesome. We even used the pictures we had taken to make the textures of the track, surrounding buildings, and advertisement billboards. In June 2015, the racetrack held a launch event, with the drivers racing the qualifiers on the simulator and the final race in the real track. We had done such an amazing job that the difference between the best lap time in the virtual and the real track was 1/10 of a second. This track, sadly, was never released to the community, as per our agreement with the owners of the track, but we sure had a lot of fun making it. A year later, around 2016, I went back to Unity. I was hyped both by Punity, the Unity remake of PT, as well as the upcoming Resident Evil 7, and wanted to make a horror game. Transients was the project's name. In spite of having a story figured out from the start, something involving aliens or ghosts, it was still just sort of a walking simulator with puzzle elements. To be completely honest, I'm glad I never got around to finishing it, because it would have contributed to the bad rep that Unity was getting at the time. Still, I made a huge level for the game and learned a lot about terrain and using different asset packs. Hint, it probably won't work. It was the first time I added options to a game, saving them with the Unity player prefs. Jump to 2020, and I was bored out of my mind, stuck at home just like everyone else, and I had a thought. I was going to bring back Mhytra.
Precious!
I made a new version of the soundtrack and started working on a basic level just to try out mechanics. I used Adobe Fuse to make the character and imported free assets to make this example level. Once I was done, I realized the controls and collision detection weren't as tight as I hoped they would be. I still liked some of the mechanics though, particularly the lane changing aspect, bringing the third dimension into a very traditional side-scrolling 2D platform shooter. But I eventually gave up on it. After that disappointment, around a year later, I tried bringing back Mhytra fully into the 3D realm, trying out a third-person cover shooter. I really enjoyed the results. Learned about finite state machines, nav meshes, explored the animator, and coded a bunch of systems, including a jetpack which I really enjoyed. Again, I had the story worked out, but it just didn't feel like my good old friend Mhytra. The controls felt good, but it had lost its identity.
Not quite my tempo. Here we go. 5, 6, and...
In 2022, I tried out something different. Having recently acquired a couple of Cinti asset packs, I tried making an arcade anti-gravity racer. I learned a lot about performance, occlusion culling, shadow casting. I used URP for the first time, and I really enjoyed using Unity's particle system and lights for the ship's effects. Accelerating, braking, boosting, colliding with walls or other ships, falling out of bounds, or hovering over water. I even made a very rudimentary racing AI whose values could be changed to increase or decrease the difficulty of the challenge. It was a very fun experience. So much so, I started designing a HUD as well as a very retro logo for the game. As to why I abandoned this game idea, I'm not quite sure yet. I might even jump back into it sometime in the future. Who knows?
Of course!
This brings us to the present day, 2023. Finally, 15 years after I finished my first game, I completed another one. Truth be told,
You
can't handle the truth!
The first one was made as a group assignment, and all my attempts since have been solo experiences. I believe that makes it harder to stay focused and motivated. With the generous library of assets that I had accumulated over the past few years, I tried to make a small Souls-like. I wanted to make it as bare bones as I possibly could, to prevent the all-too-common feature creep. I decided early on I wouldn't have parry or backstab mechanics. There would be no classes, just different characters with different starting stats, weapons, and movesets. I had even decided I wouldn't have a target lock-on system, and then I still added it later on. I had a couple of mechanics, a couple of asset packs, and a couple of weeks to get it done. So, from the end of February to early April 2023, I developed Wardens of Siegevale. I made it. I finished something. And this in itself gave me a sense of accomplishment I hadn't felt in a long time.
We came, we saw, we kicked its ass!
There's no innovation to it. There are quite a few bugs, namely in the target lock-on system, being that it was indeed an afterthought. I might improve a couple of things along the way though. Enemy hit points, enemy detection distance and nav mesh, enemy decision making, and adding more items to give more story elements to the player and encourage exploration. I found it funny though, that I finished most of the mechanics in the first 2 weeks, and the level design took most of the remaining development time up until release. I made a flowchart for the game as well as a 2D level design sketch, a skill I picked up making maps for my TTRPG sessions, and thought that would make it easier and faster to get the level done. Don't get me wrong, I might have taken longer if I hadn't done that beforehand, but I'll never know. If you want to try it out, the link is in the description. Where does my game development journey go from here? I'm not quite sure, but I do know I am now confident enough to fail again, and I'm doing so later this month, trying out my first game jam ever, Ludum Dare 53.